Okay, it was pointed out to me that I didn't. I forgot to turn the recording back on, so I'm going to do the what I did the only little bit that we were missing um, at the end of the recording that's there right now. So what we had was we had three layers or three essentially plates um, uh, that we were dealing with. We were going to composite them, and so I'm just gonna grab key light and pull that out there, and of course, so I'm just gonna do the whole thing as I did it. Keying, and remember, was the used key light on this. We selected the key color fairly close to Buddy. When we're looking at the keys, we always want to make sure we check the combined mat to make sure that our key is clean. I'm going to put a mask on him. Right. And I'm just going to bring my screen gain up to like 120. Make sure that black is black. There it is. That's nice and black now. Let's go back to look at the at our final result. And there's our guy right there. So let me just make sure that I'm on fit here. There we go. We can see a little bit of his feet there. We're going to move it around for that. I'm going to move this picture up as well. We have the field there, tree there, nice composition. Now we had him walking in. We'd done the key. We'd had him walking in. We put the explosion in. Explosion happens. So in this case, I'm going to put the explosion. You know, it happens behind him, I think, was what I was going for. Oh, he's running. And then there's that explosion, right? So I had him moving. We talked about moving the him across. If we grab him and we had him running. I'm going to shorten him up a little bit so he's a little less. And I'm going to put him on top so he's in front of the explosion. So he ends up. We had him ending up here, I think. So he's looking. There we go. He's going to stop. So that's his end point right there. I'm going to now slide him back. And we had him, we'd done that whole thing where he was, whoops, control set, sorry. We'd done that whole thing where he had moved, I don't know if you recall or not, but he now did this thing where he came in. I'm just going to turn that off. That's super loud. We don't need to hear that explosion.
Good work.
Oh, we also don't need to hear the explosion of hear me talking. There we go. Okay, so we'd done that. We'd eased into that. I'm just going to ease into that. And that's fine. That motion is good. So it doesn't really matter right now. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that. But now we got our explosion. And so our explosion happens after he stops. So our explosion was going to happen. So I had another clip that I cut into. So he stops there. There's our stop. Sorry, just going to make that smaller. And our explosion happens just before the stop. So he looks behind. There he is. I'm going to just freeze his... I'm going to... No. Here. Actually, I'm just to make it easier... what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this this clip here, Control D, and I am going to freeze it on the last frame. So I'm going to freeze on last frame here. So I go to time, freeze on last frame. There it is there. And I don't want it available up until that point. So I'm just going to, so it just gives me something. You see what I'm saying? That just gives me something that stays there, right? So I just got, before I did a clip of him. If you watch it now, before last time I did this, I had another clip of him that I used, but I'm just gonna freeze him there for the sake of what we did in the class. So what this effort was about the lighting. So I'd put in a light to mimic the daylight. So the sun, you can see the sun is obviously high, up there. So there were a couple of lights I'm going to put in, and as I said before, I'm going to put in a point light. Let me see here. Yeah, so I'm going to put in a point light where the explosion is, and I'm going to make it yellowy. I can grab a color from here, or I can, just come up with something like that. So there's a point light, and I want it to cast shadows. Okay. And it comes up, it says, it doesn't affect 2D layers, right? So, so I need to make my layers 3D, right? So I'm going to make both my layers there 3D. You can see what happens immediately. They're affected by that light. And of course, because the light, I'm going to put it down here. Because the light affects 2D layers, or it affects 3D layers, but this layer actually has no depth on it. We'll work on that in a second, but there's our point light that comes on. Because I'm going to tie it to the explosion, I want it to work as the explosion starts. So the explosion starts there, so it needs to start at the same time as the explosion. And there it is there. I want to make it, it's a little dark there, but that's fine at this moment. We're going to deal with that. What we're going to do with a light like that light needs to have some realism added to it. So in an explosion situation like this, it's clearly not a uniform light source. As far as the intensity goes, the intensity is going to vary. So we can vary the intensity a couple of different ways. One way we can go in and actually go to our light options. We can go in and we can keyframe our intensity. But that's an awful lot of work, and it doesn't allow us to really adjust it afterwards. We have to then go in and adjust every keyframe. So this is a really good opportunity to use an expression. So when we're doing expressions, we're just gonna which is those little JavaScript things that tell it to do things. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna hit Alt and intensity, and Alt gives us a makes it an expression. You can see, as soon as you see the red there, you see these are all blue, this one is red, that means there's an expression that's associated with it. It means it's controlled by something else. And we're going to wiggle the intensity back and forth. So we're going to do wiggle, bracket, and there's two numbers that always follow wiggle. One is how many times per second, and the other one is kind of the amplitude. It depends on what the element is, but in this case, we're going to make it, go, say, 20 times a second, fairly frenetically. And we're going to have lots of change. I will try that and see. And then I'm not going to enter. I'm just going to move off it. There it is. Now with a wiggle, we can take a look at it and see what it looks like. Let's just hit space bar. And you can see there, now it's flashing. It's flashing randomly. Okay. Like that. And when you're looking at it, I'm going to make this a little smaller so I can go back. There we go. If I'm looking at my light, my point light, and I look at this intensity level, which I'm affecting by the expression, I can go through, and as I move down frame by frame, so page down, I can see 180%, 105%, 94%, 3%, blah, 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 right? You can see frame at a time, it's generating these crazy effects. Now, the problem is that this needs to be an additional light source to him. So this is happening. We're getting that light from this explosion. That's true. But we also need to have like a generic light on him because there's too much shadow. So I'm going to put a light in. I'm going to put a new light. In this case, I'm going to make it a spotlight so I can adjust the side of it. And I'm going to make it daylight. It's going to be white. It's going to be daylight. And I'll work on all that other stuff. So that I'm going to need to move over. So I'm trying to mimic the sun a little bit, right? So I got to go up. And you can see that I can create a little bit of shadow on him by moving. This is my, whoops, Control Z. This is my, there's my light. This is where it's pointed at, right? So you can see there's a little bit of shadow behind him. And we can adjust this, but I want his face to be in a little bit of shadow. So let's go, and there now you have light from that happening. Now, it's happening too fast, right? There's too much flicker, right, from that. So I'm going to go back to my point light, back to my expression. I'm going to dial down the amount of times it happens per second. So let's cut it in half to 10 and see what happens. See if we like that better. And that's better. That's much better, right? That's a more, right? And now as it gets gray there, we might want it to be more, we might want it to die down. So if we want to go up here, so we could, there's a couple of ways to do it, like there is for everything. What I did in class was I just moved I moved it away. I can also adjust the fall off distance and the radius. So let me just see here how much. So if I want it to just affect his back more, I can turn off the fall off. I can turn on the fall off, sorry. So I can make it, I'm going to make it, in this case, I'm going to make it smooth. And I'm going to make the fall off distance, I'm going to increase it. There it is. So it's just getting to him right there. You can see it. And then as we get to about here, I'm going to keyframe my fall off distance. And I'm going to dial it down so that it won't be affecting him as much. There. Now it won't affect him at all. So you see it'll just actually go away. The light just stops affecting him. Actually, no, it doesn't. Let me just increase that. There we go. Now the light's not affecting him. And I can move that keyframe down here. So let's just look at that. So you get a lot of flashing at the start. And then it will, now it's going to move, it's going to die down. It's still too much, but you tweak with it. There we go. We might want to move that more quickly. There we go. There you go. And of course, my spotlight is probably a little too. There we go. I could adjust my whoops. You just, so there you go. Yeah, I'm just going to adjust that, the intensity of that light a little bit. There we go. Because we got that bright daylight, right? So there we go. So now he comes in. Now you'd have to move the spotlight with him to mimic the daylight, but there you go. Now you've got a flashing. It's adding to the light. Your intensity from that point light is flashing. So that's what we did in the last kind of half hour of the class. I've done it a little bit more quickly here because I haven't had to discuss it quite so much. But here's the takeaway: what you're trying to do with lighting is you're trying you're compositing things together. You have these plates. You have your back plate, which is going to be determining what the lighting levels in general in the scene are like. You've got your middle plate here, which is your action in this case, and then you got a front plate here, which is this explosion. Each of those plates have to kind of relate to each other, and the way you do that is with lighting, with color, intensity, and direction of lighting. So you need to be able to adjust those things, and always understanding that in the end, your pieces are these flat little cutouts, right? You're building this elaborate kind of puppet theater sort of thing. So in this case, to achieve that flicker from the explosion, I used an expression down here. So I clicked Alt and stopwatch to build an expression. I wrote a very simple wiggle expression. When you look at expressions, I've covered this before, but you can see in here, if you click on this little arrow here, you can see that there's general ones that you can do. There are ease expressions. There's some random number generators. So you can create some sort of. Sometimes you can do some random stuff. We use wiggle a lot. It's my kind of one of the few that I always remember. Most of these I have to be honest, have to look up, but I can act. There is actually light intensity one there. I like using wiggle because it's so general. We use it all the time to move things randomly, and it's a great expression. So that's but what you're doing is you're trying to make elements of a screen of a image, once you compile them together, work together and seem like they're part of the same scene. So the lighting matches all the objects, and it's not so obvious that you've laid things in. And so we do this with transfer modes, and we use it with lighting, and we do it with blur and stuff like that. Like you build scenes, right? So maybe I want to put in a little bit of blur on that background to try and give us the the effect that we are getting more. There's a little bit of distance to it, right? So we can give it a bit of distance that way. There's that tree back there, maybe a little less. There you go. We can do that sort of thing. So we work with this to build a scene. This is when we start getting into because everything we've done so far is very much the motion component. Now we're looking at the VFXy component, where you're looking at the lighting, the look of it, the shadows and stuff like that. Like, do we have a shadow from this guy? Is it down here? Is there a shadow from this? The right now the explosion is not 3D. So if I make the explosion 3D, it's going to be affected by the light. So I don't necessarily want that, right? Although I could, anyway, whatever, I could do it. I could make it affect that, that light. But I might want to add his shadow from him, stuff like that. So it's this, but it's the color of the lighting, it's the direction of the lighting, and it's the intensity of the lighting. And those are the elements that you work with to try and make your stuff look like it's all actually in the same scene. And that's what we're going to be looking for. So I'm looking for in that assignment, in the next assignment, which is the individual assignment, which is about the car. And in which case, and this is how I ended this whole class off. I'm going to go look at some bits, and I'm going to show you. Pardon me. I'm going to look and see if I got this up in my week 6 here. Yeah. So, whoops. I'm going to bring in a sample car thing. I'm just going to bring it to the same. So when you're looking at the car, well, so this is the interior of a Mercedes-Benz F015 concept car. And this is an example of the kind of thing that you would be looking at, right? So to create your experience. So I just got this picture off the web. But when you're looking at something like this, you're going to have to put something outside these windows. You're going to have to put UI on. Like if this is your screen, your interface screens, these become where your UI lives. Here's some sort of I don't know what's going on there. Who knows? But maybe it's an entertainment thing. Maybe it's a movie. Maybe it's a map. Maybe it's who knows what it is. This is your meeting coming up. Maybe your Zoom call. Who knows? But you're going to have to build these things in and make them look like they make sense there. So it's going to be this combination of distortion and lighting and blend modes and stuff. So if I want to, let's say, have this scene that I have behind me going on, let's go and we'll I can draw a mask on this. And it's not moving, so it's going to be pretty easy to do, right? Okay, so there's a mask, but of course I need to flip it the other way, right? So I need to invert that mask. So there's my guy going on outside the Mercedes, right? So if I watch this scene now, good job on the mask, eh? There's your guy happening outside the Mercedes, but and the explosion, right? But I'm just going to do one just as an example to show you. Sorry. I'm going to just duplicate this comp just so I can delete some things from it. Just in case I want to go back, I'm going to delete. I'll just turn them off, buddy, and turn the explosion off. And I'm going to bring this. And I'm going to move it up. So there's that window, right? So there's, so let's say we start here. Keyframe the position. We go down 6 seconds. We're down here now. So now we're going to have stuff moving, right, outside the window. Okay. So would this lighting be accurate? Or you've got this daylight outside, right? So this would not be, like a viable thing. You've got some light clearly coming in here. You see there's the shadow from that. It's coming from up here. Right? I guess. Who knows? There's a lot of light inside this thing. But what I'm saying is your light outside would have to match. So maybe you would, let me just go. I'm going to go put another mat on this thing, but maybe you would make it a bit more, I don't know, blue or something like that. Maybe, whoops. I have to adjust this. There we go. Whoops. Sorry. Started to make another mask, so I'll just connect them. And then I can put and I'll put one, put one up there. There we go. I invert that mask as well. Whoops. You have to fix the masks. I'm just going to make this one a subtract. Oh, now I have both subtract. Oops. There we go. So there's your two windows now. So you make a judgment based on, maybe this light out here is going to be more of a goldeny light, right? Or something. So let's say outside, we take our point light now. Where's our point light? We would have to make our car 3D to have the light work on it. Turn the spotlight off. Take your point light, which hasn't been affected yet. Move the point light there. Now the point light, see the point light's affecting it, right? But is that like a realistic, you know, is that a realistic, thing? Like, is that how golden is that, right? Too golden, right? But maybe that's your light source. And this, there you go. You're clearly getting light from that. I'm going to take now my point light is still got a wiggle on it. So it's going to be like pretty crazy, right? But I would take that wiggle off. So I'm going to delete my expression. Make it back to there. So that's just took my expression off it. I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space here. I'm going to increase my fall off distance. Right? So it gets the whole car, the whole interior. And I can increase my intensity a little bit, right? And that color, I can dial it down, make it a bit more white. Okay, now you're getting light from that window. Okay, so that's more clearly you're getting light from that window because it's fading away as it goes away, right? And there's your stuff moving around on the outside. So here I'm not going to have flickering of light, but I'm going to have this now that what's happening is my fall off distance is adjusting. So I'm going to delete those two keyframes. But the key here is that your color, your direction, your intensity of your light has a huge impact on how believable your scenery is. Okay? In this case, like if you were doing this kind of thing and you had a picture, you would have to put some. Here's another place you would put an expression. And I didn't do this in class, but I can explain it to you here. Like, let's say you're gonna work on you could do put an expression just on your on one position, right? You can, and when you're doing and you could move it up and down. You can jiggle it up and down. When you're look at doing expressions, the best way to do expressions is to search for it on the web. You just do a little Google search. You can Google, say, adjust position. And the reason I say that is because I know it's not as simple to adjust just X or just Y. It's doable. I have to go look it up again. So, but that's how you do it. You go, I know I can do this with an expression. What expression should I use? Just Google it, look it up. So that's the lesson really was about. The second half of the lesson on Monday was really about this adjusting lighting, intensity, color, and direction to try and create a realistic VFX experience. When you're also, like, speaking of that in here, if your screens are LED backlit, you put your UI over top of this, let's say you're using this sort of thing, they would be a different color than the ambient color outside, which is very golden, hourly light, right? So that's another way you use your lighting to tell your story. Okay, that's it. I'm going to kill the recording now, if I can find it.